Our final presentation before lunch is an IT presentation. Why IT? You've heard about problems in the Road Accident Fund Administration. You've heard of problems in the State Attorney's Office, in the Provincial Departments of Health, legal offices with records, record keeping, etc. Mr. Michael Ansley, who is an IT Executive Director in the subfield of innovation and strategy, in other words, as far as IT is concerned, to develop a system for a new or a novel purpose. And Mr. Willem Edeling, who is my son, he is an IT solutions architect working with Mr. Michael Ansley. They have been approached years ago already by APRAV to investigate whether it is possible to form an IT platform, a secure online database for easy, secure and fast management, storage and organization of relevant medical and medico-legal data. So they are going to give us a presentation entitled Digitizing the Value Chain, Improving Service Delivery, and most particularly reducing the opportunity for fraud. Michael and Willem.
Good afternoon, Mr. President and Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much for the introduction. Let's get it up there. There we go. So it's an unusual topic given the speakers that we've heard this morning to talk about IT, but I think it's relevant. Is it not coming through? I have a tendency to eat my words. So if you're not able to hear, please shout from the back, and I'll get closer to the speaker. Thanks very much for the introduction. We've been working in the background for the last year and a half, 2 years, to try and understand how IT, or conceptualize how IT and technology solutions might be able to go some way towards solving the problems, many of which you've articulated this morning. So from a background perspective, obviously we're a private sector company, we work with big enterprises. And by and large, our business is around solving complex business problems where automation is required over these sort of complex life cycles. And we have significant experience in doing that, both locally here in South Africa and also with global brands as well. So I've got to wrestle with a PC, which I'm not used to. So in terms of the topics that I want to talk to you, and the way I'm going to split this up is, it's another presentation. We've had lots of presentations this morning. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit of slideware, 4 or 5 slides. These are the topics. And then we're going to flip over to the art of the possible. So one of the things that I like to do when we're talking about technology is to show what it can do. So we prepared some mock-ups, some concepts this morning to share with you about. As I listened to the problems this morning, I'm hoping that we'll be able to pick some of those key points up and show you what's possible to do with technology in terms of solving a problem. But the key focus areas for us was this concept of improving service delivery. And I'm going to break each one of these down in a little bit more detail. I want to talk about eliminating fraud. This was one of the key topics. We want to talk about improving efficiencies. So we drive cost out of the systems, how we improve things over time using technology. And then I also wanted to talk right at the end around something we haven't spoken about, but taking cognizance of security across a digital value chain as well. Okay. So this concept of service delivery, and I wrestle with this both from a personal perspective, and again, I was listening to a lot of the conversations this morning. And perhaps I use an example of trying to engage actually in the last couple of weeks with a government agency using an e-platform. And I found the experience incredibly frustrating. I also look at colleagues who work in this business, the medico-legal business, and I watch the frustration with which they go about their day-to-day business, huge amounts of paperwork, very cumbersome processes, huge amounts of frustration. And really what technology is about actually is creating this concept of being able to engage with the technology anywhere, anytime, anyhow. And the key thing is you need to meet people where they are. One of the conversations again that came out this morning is that, and what I hear recurring and what we've had in terms of the workshops that we've had and some of the background stuff is there is this need for people to go somewhere to be serviced by an expert in a physical location with simple no cognizance of these people's lifestyles, their need to work and earn money and so on and so forth, and the inefficiencies that it introduces in the system. We have to meet people where they are. We have to do that at any time of day and any time of the day of the week. And we need to do that using what they have in their hand. And it's unfortunate I couldn't show it this morning. We had to come onto this mobile, but this is a concept now, and come and have a look at this afterwards. But the concept is to be able to go in and log a claim and do it on the mobile device. We've got 80 or 90 million subscribers in this country, mobile devices. Everybody's got one. Technology needs to reach guys and people, and it has to be done elegantly. And it has to be done in a way that promotes fair and equitable access to services. So the service, quite frankly, if it's delivered to an individual via technology solution, doesn't care whether you're rich or poor or where you are. It provides an equitable access to the same services. And it must be easy. So we often, when we think about these big solutions and complexity, we forget that actually it's important to make it easy and really easily consumable as well. What I listened to as an outsider this morning, and I'm certainly no medical legal expert, but I hear lots of complexity in a process that is highly complex. And listening to this audience today, articulating in their various areas of expertise this level of complexity, I wonder what it feels like as a common person who's got to engage with these processes. And I wonder if there's not an opportunity to use technology to make that somewhat more elegant and easy, consumable. And we need to do that across the case life cycle. So one of the things that I do see engaging, again, with government, parastatal or semi-government institutions, and even in businesses, is that we have solutions in isolated sort of, what's the right word, containers, hierarchies. And we need to create something that can flow across all of these components, whether it's integrating into home affairs or whether it's integrating into a legal capability, or whether it's integrating into a case manager, for example. I heard listening with interest around this concept of case management. But we need to be able to integrate these capabilities into a platform, and not to have them as divided components, but we need to integrate them all into this collaboration platform. This concept of elimination of fraud is actually not new, and it's certainly not unique to the business we're talking about today. This is common in everything we do. So when we talk to businesses, whether they're in telecoms, whether they're in financial services, or whether they're in asset management, this is a standard practice. This is a given. This is one of the first topics that's talked about, along with automation, improving the value chain. We talk about how we're going to get controls on the system. And it's really about, well, as soon as we start to digitize things across a life cycle, and you're able to associate something in a life cycle with a person, an identity, then you're able to create an audit trail. And it's really easy. And we'll show you some of that a little bit later on. And this is the key driver to containing fraud, is to be able to have a record, a single place where you have a record or a historic record or an audit trail. I listened earlier on also to something that came up, and this was around this concept of accountability. When we talk automation using technology, what we do is we actually create something called process-driven accountability. So in other words, when you have a process, and I think it was in the opening speech where we talked about that there's this desire to have 80% of the common cases following a standardized process with a standardized outcome. If that is the concept and that is the desire and the dream, then of course by automating against just those 80%, you create process-driven accountability. Because you know the actors who are engaging with a process when they're supposed to be engaging with a process, and then who belongs to those actors, what are the type of people and who they are. So you create that accountability, we automate that accountability. And what we're doing with businesses around this as well is, and I suppose this talks actually to this business of, when we look at the government and we look at the things like the function of the audit committees and so forth, and we look at the state of SOEs and issues around non-compliance, what we're doing for private businesses now is when we automate specific process types, and I'll use an example that's perhaps not familiar, but when we automate, for example, an IT value chain, we talk about something like a COBIT framework, which then whirls up into the King framework and so on and so forth. Now, it might be the Public Finance Act, or it might be another type of governance framework, but you're able to link that governance framework to the controls within the application or within the system. So as you progress cases through a life cycle, you actually can have control points. You can set out the control points in that life cycle and link that back or provide a real-time audit visibility against known controls in the system. On the efficiency side, I did talk about leveraging existing assets. I was listening again to this panel of experts this morning, and there are these enormous number of assets that sit outside in this ecosystem. I mean, Home Affairs is an obvious classic example, but there are institutes, there are business institutes, but these assets are disconnected. They're engaging each other with a paper-based life cycle. They're engaging via emails and telephone calls, and they're engaging via a complex legal process in many instances. There's no way to get these onto a single collaboration platform. Or seemingly at this stage, there's no single process to do it. And one of the things that we're articulating here today, looking really at the solution side, is how do we actually integrate? And again, I'll refer to that as an example of how elegantly this can be done. And of course, it's determined by how fast that can be. Those components can be integrated onto the collaboration platform. And I've talked about it before, this concept, this real need. When you have a process, you can get to a predetermined outcome a lot more elegantly. You have common processes and little opportunity for variation. We've had a lot of discussions, especially Willem and myself, around this concept of reducing cost over time. I was staggered, because I actually didn't know it. I was staggered by the numbers that were mentioned by the speakers today in terms of either wastage or apparent wastage, cost overruns, limited opportunities for clawbacks and so forth. There has to be a way when you're using a technology platform, and when you use a technology platform, you have records on a single platform. You provide a data set that can be interrogated to find ways to reduce that cost burden over time. So you create the opportunities for improvement or cost reduction. You know where they are, and then you can work towards them, and you can actually measure the impact because you see the results on the common platform. I was listening earlier on to this concept of frivolous claims risks. Again, when you're delivering a technology solution that captures the information related to a claims lifecycle over time, different claims of types over time, you're able to interrogate that data using tools like predictive analytics. And when you do that, you're able to understand how you can eliminate cost out of that system over time, but you can also understand what might be deemed serious and earnest versus frivolous based on the data that exists in the system. And I think one of the speakers mentioned this earlier, but this kind of goes without saying in the world of technology. But again, one of the problems that was indicated, I think it was by the second to last speaker in the earlier conversation, was the lack of record keeping. So record keeping is paper-based today. I think the last speaker talked about, or previous to last speaker also talked about handwriting and ineligibility and so forth. When you digitize assets, those problems go away. The records are kept, they become historic, they are legal evidentiaries, and they're retained for time. And quite frankly, there's no reason not to do it to this day. Today, the costs of doing this have dropped dramatically. I mean, that's the reality, yeah. And then sort of finally, we've got this concept of security risk. Fascinating from a personal experience perspective. Again, watching good friends of mine, wrestle with this paper-based system that we have today as they try to execute cases over their life cycle, is the availability of personal information in paper-based systems that are open, quite frankly, to anybody. And this is the people's identity, it's location information, it's the services they're offered, it's their medical history, and there's open, or can be open. And is open to fraud. It's open to access by non-sanctioned individuals. So the concept of a system, or let's say a technology system that allows us automation of the case lifecycle, is you can ensure that data is only made available to the right people at the right time within a process as well. This concept of role-based access. And of course, when we are using technology tools, when we move away from things like paper-based systems, we reduce the risk of data exposure both in transit and in storage. So when things move between people or move between people in a process, you eliminate the security risk around that. And then, of course, when we use technology, we've got such a great opportunity here. It's like a reset button. It's not often that technology guys get to engage in a business where there's an opportunity to create something from scratch in many cases, or in a case like this, using modern technologies. Modern technologies are amazing. They are absolutely amazing, and most businesses are stuck with the legacy of the past, and it's very hard for them to make a move onto new, low-cost and effective technology, and here we have a great opportunity to do so, leveraging things like cloud and so forth. That's it for my presentation. So, apologies for the small inconvenience of logging in. This is a simple concept. We wanted to be able to show you, and honestly, whether it's done on a computer today or whether it's done on a mobile device, it's irrelevant. Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's just a form factor thing. But this is the concept. We want to be able to engage a group of people, whether they be consumers of your services. These are the people who come in and they've got a claim and they need to do something. And they want to engage with the experts, so they're required to engage with a set of experts. You want to be able to engage them where they are using the device that they've got at their disposal. But equally, you want to be able to engage a set of highly educated individuals who are playing a specific function within the value chain as well. And I'm going to share with you one or two examples and show you the concept of the art. I call this the kind of the art of the possible. Yeah? So there's this concept here of something called log a claim. Down to the bottom. I'm trying to get down. There we go. Doesn't work so easy on this computer. We've developed so based on some conversations that we've had with parties like APRA over the last year and a half or so, we understand the types of data, the type of forms and information that are required to be digitized over this life cycle. And this is a typical example of someone being able to come in through a self-service, what we call a self-service portal, anywhere, anytime, wherever they are, and be able to log a claim. I'm not going to go through the entire process, but I'm going to show you an example of what such information might look like. And then I'm going to take you into what a completed instance of this might look like, so you can see how the data has been captured as well. So we have an integration into Home Affairs for identity. So people who come in to these devices using something like a mobile device are able to identify themselves properly using the mobile device. And that can be extended to things like biometrics as well, which is also fully integrated with Home Affairs. So these days with things like the EID or the new digital ID card that all captures biometrics, that biometrics can be validated by your phone and we can identify the individual correctly by the time they come into a self-service device like this. And then you have this concept of being able to get to a set of information. Sorry, that's very fast. Over time, being able to capture things about the location of an accident, information related to an incident or an accident, date and times, things like motor vehicles. And remember that these things can be integrated. So I talked about this concept of collaborating across assets earlier on. So if you're able to integrate into Home Affairs, nothing stops you from integrating into something like NATIS as well to get, for example, car information or vehicle registration information be validated. There's the concept of being able to add injuries. I'll just take a quick example here. But the idea to be able to add injuries of type, add descriptions of injuries, add attachments, pictures, images, x-rays, whatever the case may be in substantiation of a claim right from the outset. And this can be done by the individual or by the doctor putting in the claim as well. Just examples. I'm going to go back to an existing claim so we can have a look, see what that looks like. Not waste any time. One of these concepts I talked about earlier on, this concept of elegance and engaging people in this on a journey and making it user-friendly, thinking like something you use on an application on your mobile phone today, is a similar concept. What do your claimants do when they're stuck inside a process and they don't know what to do next? One of the speakers earlier on talked about this concept of how difficult it is for claimants actually to engage in the process in the case life cycle. Here we have a digital representation of where you might be in a life cycle as well. Simple concept of being able to understand I'm in the claims process, what the next step is that I'm being asked for, and being able to see this again and visualized in a format like this where I'm having a conversation with someone. So I'm able to access a form, a process, and I'm able to engage with that process in a digital format. I'm able to put my pictures on, I'm able to have a conversation with a legal expert at the right point in time, and I'm able to get that feedback in real time as well. All right. Do you want to just show the audit side? Okay. So I need to, give me a second. Sorry, I need to move. We didn't get prepared properly on this computer, so I just need to get into the right, hold on, give me a second. And this is the last one that I'd like to show. I just want to show this concept of an audit and what that means. It's a little slow. So I talked earlier on about this concept of being able to bring up audits and manage the being able to understand the interactions that people and instances and entities have with a technology system. I've created this while we were talking earlier on, so there's a little bit of history in here. But for every date timestamp, for every action taken across a record, every action, whether you're changing a claim number, or whether you are rejecting a claim or approving a claim, whether you're distributing that claim to another party for additional actions, every single one of those items are typically audited or recorded inside systems like this. They can never be modified, and they're tracked in formats like this, and they can be interrogated by log management systems. They can be interrogated by predictive analytics systems. They can be interrogated by audit officers and compliance officers as well, both in process and post process. So these are examples of what technology is able to do in meeting the outcomes as I set out in my presentation. There's a lot more to this as an example, but it's somehow hard to do demos on big screens like this. Both Willem and I are available if you'd like to have any further information on this. There's a lot of work that's been done in the background to talk about this concept of improving case management and automating case management over its life cycle. Am I on time? Good, thanks very much.
Thank you, Michael. Willem showed me last night that the person lodging the claim, whether the attorney or the person himself, or if you ask his doctor to interact on his behalf, can see a photograph of the claims handler who is making decisions on his claim, and also the name of the person. And as Michael pointed out, every action is logged. If your claim is rejected, you can ask why. And he showed me that if your claim is, let us say, 100,000 Rand, and that is the real value of the claim, a claims handler can, at another point in time, go and change that amount to 1 million Rand and authorize a payout for 1 million Rand, which goes wherever, and then afterwards go back and change it to 10,000 Rand. So on his stats, it looks good because he only paid out 10,000 on a 100,000 claim, whereas he actually gave somebody 1 million. And this system will track every one of those changes. It will tell you at what time, which person made the change from what to what. And that really blew my mind away. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.